everyone, good morning. My name is Olawumi Timtayo Hannah. I am a therapist, a psychologist working with Arogi Trauma Care Foundation. This morning, we'll be having a conversation about a personal talk that is also a universal one. This morning, we'll talk about how to deal with grief effectively. Grief is something that creeps in to people's day-to-day life. Grief is something one or two people, each and every one of us might have experienced at one point or the other in life. But we must know how to handle grief effectively in a way that is healthy and in a way that we can help ourselves through the process and get out of it safe. Grief is an emotional loss. It's an emotional feeling we feel due to loss. Now, the loss does not necessarily have to be one thing. I mean, we're common with the grief that comes with the loss of a loved one, but we have several other types of grief. You can feel grief for the loss of a dream, the loss of a job, the loss of health, or maybe some other stuff that are personal to you. But grief is your thoughts and emotions while going through grief is actually valid. And the end result of grief most times is anger, pain, disturbance, health issues, and we must understand that the way you want to deal with grief while you're going through it is valid. If you want to ventilate by crying, by talking to somebody, by talking about it frequently until you get better, all of these processes are actually very valid. But one thing is important: when you're going through grief, you must deal with it in an healthy manner. You must deal with it in an healthy manner and know how to handle it healthy. And that's what we want to talk about here today. According to the psychiatrist Elizabeth Elba Royce, she mentioned that there are 5 stages to handling grief. And the stages of grief is in 5 stages. The first stage is denial. When an individual is faced with a particular situation, the first thing that occurs to you, especially at the point of maybe a loss of a loved one, you are in a state of denial. At that point, your mind is thinking of, no, this can't be happening, it can't be real, I can't accept this, and all of that. So for the first stage, while you're experiencing grief, you are in denial. Your mind can't take it. You can't capture why this is all happening at once. Your mind can't process it, and that is actually totally fine. The second stage why one is dealing with grief is anger. At this stage, your mind is already feeling like, why me? Why does this have to happen to me? Maybe you feel like you're all perfect, or you feel like, oh, in my ways, I've tried, I've kept this, I've done the right thing, I've eaten healthy. An example is somebody that has been diagnosed with cancer, and such a person is one that, you feel like you've been eating healthy, you've been watching what you take and all of that. Then all of a sudden you feel like you're diagnosed with cancer. At that point, all that is in your head is you're filled with rage, like, why me? There are people that eat carelessly, there are people that takes anything, but they're not experiencing such kind of result. All of this process is all part of the stages in grief. The third stage is bargaining, the bargaining stage. At this stage in time, your mind is bargaining like, okay, what could I have done different? Or in a situation whereby maybe you lost a parent to death and maybe they were just ill briefly, or you feel like, oh, maybe this sickness is something that we can just take care of in the house, or maybe, for example, the parent complains of maybe headache, and then you're like, okay, can you take paracetamol? Let's see how it goes before we get to the hospital. And then in the next few hours, the sickness progressed so fast, and then you lost such a loved one. You would always feel like, what if I'd rushed to the hospital the moment the person said I had an headache? What if I'd done things differently and all of that? All of these stages are all part of the stages of grief. The next stage is the depression stage. Now, at this stage, your mind has begun to process all that has happened. The loss or the gravity or the weight of what led to this emotion, this grief, has weighed in and has sinked into you. At this stage, you're becoming moody, you're becoming withdrawn, you're beginning to feel like everything is crashing down. The last stage of grief is acceptance. This is the acceptance stage. In this stage of grief, you have come to accept that, oh, okay, this has happened. There's no way forward. I've lost this parent, I've lost this child, oh, this job is over, and all of that. At this stage in grief, you have finally accepted that something has been done to you, something has happened. Now, these 5 stages of grief is not linear. Sometimes it doesn't happen in a straight form. You could have the anger stage first before you move to the acceptance. You could have the depression stage first before you move to the denial and all of that. But these are the 5 stages of grief that we have. And while you're going through grief, this process, if you ever go through this process, if you're going through this process while you're going through grief, it is very valid. It is very okay. It is okay to actually feel this way. Coping effectively with grief. At this stage, when you have gone through the 5 processes of grief, you need to now learn how to cope effectively with grief. Now, this is the only way you can process grief in an healthy form without hurting yourself, without harming yourself. Now, these are the steps one must follow when you are trying to cope effectively with grief. Number 1, you must acknowledge the pain. You must not live in denial for too long. You must learn to agree that something has happened. I have lost something. Something tangible has been taken or has been misplaced from me. So you must, within yourself and your mind, accept and acknowledge the pain that something has happened. Now, when you have now acknowledged the pain, the next step to move to is seek support. You cannot heal or get out of pain in isolation. You have to talk to somebody. You would have to reach out to somebody. You would have to have people around you for support, people around you to, give you the encouragement, give you the talk, push you out of such emotions and push you out of such feelings so that you don't stay moody, you don't stay in isolation for too long, and you do not end up going into depression due to isolation. The next step, while after seeking support, is being intentional about oneself. So if you usually not, because of the grief, if you have not been taking your breaks, you've not been eating properly, you've not been sleeping well, at this stage, you now have to be intentional about eating well. You have to be intentional about taking your breaks. You have to be intentional about doing the things you do on a normal day before the loss occurred. Now, an example is, peradventure you lose the child or you lose the loved one. You could encourage yourself and think of it that, oh, if my father was here, if my mother was there, would they be happy seeing me looking this tattered, looking like, oh, I've not even seen the walls of a same room in days. So you need to push yourself. Do something intentional for yourself, even while you're going through the process of grief. The next one is start thinking creative. Do something creative. So if you've not recognized what your hobbies are, or you do not have a specific hobbies that take your mind off stress, at this stage you might want to consider one and then push for it. Like you could take up painting, you could take up music, just do something to distract your mind. Be creative at this point. The next stage is give yourself time. There is a saying that says that time heals. I promise this is so true. Time does heal. It won't take away the pain, nor will it replace what has been lost. But what time will do to you is help you accommodate the pain over time. Over time, you will get used to not seeing the person anymore. You will get used to not having the person around anymore. You will get used to not working in that place anymore. But slowly and gradually, you would be fine. You would not forget such experience or forget your time with a loved one, but one thing is certain: you would have gotten better from where you were when you initially heard that they passed, or when you initially had a loss. And over time, time would help you accommodate and balance up better. So time does heal. Give yourself time, give yourself grace. Do not be eager to just push yourself out of the place of grief. No, give yourself time. Give yourself time to heal. Give yourself time to walk through the process in an healthy manner. In closing, we grieve because we love. We grieve because we care. Thanks for joining us today. If you want to reach out for help or support, Arogi Trauma Care Foundation, our social media platforms and phone numbers are displayed on the screen. Thank you.
All right, welcome back. Yes, you still watching Nigeria Today Live, and of course, we just had an amazing talk about how to deal with grief effectively. You know, the first thing I think is one of the most important things that she pointed out for grief is that there's this denial part. Now, no, it did not just happen. Nah, you don't want to believe it. There probably is when you see the person going into the ground, and that's when you realize that. Okay. Now, that is actually real. It's real. For you, what's the most terrible part to deal with? Like the other part is the denial. A lot of people cannot deal with that aspect. So sometimes you even see some persons, they're not even crying. They are living in denial that, no, this has happened. So they don't cry. They're just looking at you.
Honestly speaking, because by the time that person breaks down, it might not be pleasant at all. And then they might be lashing out in an unhealthy way. Because that was what I love that she said that whatever way you want to cope with grief, make sure you are doing it in a healthy manner. That is so important. Because another one I know people go through is this guilt. Because she said that, like, let's say like a loved one called you and said, oh, I'm having a headache. And said, okay, maybe you are stressed, maybe she's paracetamol, go to sleep down. When you wake up, you'll be feeling better. And then the person dies. You know, that guilt of if I had known that she'd have told us to go to the hospital, if I said that maybe she's still going to be alive, or is she or he or she's still going to be alive. So that is actually a whole lot to do with. It's very, very sad. And really, thank you so much, Dr. Olaomi Anna, for walking us through the stages of dealing with grief. And I hope that for everyone out there who is dealing with grief, may you be granted the strength, the fortitude to bear the loss that you're going through. And for people who will deal with grief, because it's one of those inevitable things in life. Everyone will deal with grief in one way or another. I also hope all of us the strength to bear that loss whenever it will happen, because it will happen.